when it's almost time for Friday Night Lights, but the question is, will there be any Sunday game day or Monday Night Football? At this point, who knows? All I know is I'm here with the All-Pro and two-time Pro Bowl player, Brad Hawkins. Thank you for being on the show with me today.
Anytime, Morgan.
I'm Morgan, and you're watching the Augie Girl Network. Mr. Hawkins, would you please take a minute and tell our viewers a little about yourself?
My name is Brad Hopkins. I am a 13-year retired NFL player for the Tennessee Titans / Houston Oilers. I retired. My first year was in 1993. I retired in 2006. I am the father of 3, 2 boys and a girl, 14, 13, and 11. I am currently a sports broadcaster on WNSR here locally in Nashville, and that's what I do on a regular basis.
So, on your show, can you hear it on the radio?
Oh, absolutely. You can hear it on the radio and the internet. Shameless plug, but yeah. Sports Radio 560 whenever you're bored.
Let's go back a bit. When you were growing up, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a teacher. I love going to class. I had one of the best attendance records when I was in school. I think I might have missed 2 days. I love going. I love being around my buddies. I love my teachers. And I think that's what I wanted to do. When I first left high school and I went on to college, I thought, I definitely want to get an education. I want to be someone that can stand in front of the classroom and tell kids like you what to do.
I wish I could have a person friends like that.
Yeah, that was cool. It was fun.
When did you first start playing football?
Well, I kind of dabbled in it, when I was a kid. I really didn't have the kind of interest as a youngster that a lot of kids do. Basketball is something I kind of gravitated towards, but I started playing competitively probably at the beginning of my high school career, my freshman, sophomore year, so I really kind of started making it something that I really wanted to do.
Did you play any other sports?
I did. I played basketball. I didn't play baseball. I understand your brother's a pretty good baseball player. I wasn't a very good baseball player, so I didn't follow that. But basketball, that was one of my true passions. I really enjoyed getting out there and practicing, and I enjoyed everything about it. And I think that's what made me a better player at basketball, because I really enjoyed it so much. I put a lot of my heart into it.
When did you first realize that being a football player is what you were going to do when you grew up?
I was doing pretty good in both sports, football and basketball. I just think I started getting more notoriety as being a football player, maybe because of my size. People saw me more as a football player than they did a basketball player. Probably about my junior, senior year, I really started focusing on that, maybe being an avenue for me to be able to go to college. So I really started trying harder and focusing on what I could do to make myself a better player.
What is your favorite childhood memory?
Probably road trips with my family. We go to places like, we go to the lake, or we go to Disney World, or places like that, and always spending time with my family is something that I had fun doing. We didn't travel a whole lot, so that made it special whenever we got to do that. So, we'd all pile in the car in the middle of the night, because my dad liked driving at night. He didn't like driving during the day when all the traffic was out. And then that way we could just kind of get there with ease. It was pretty fun.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah.
One time my mom took us out of school, but we were there in Chattanooga, and the traffic was, there was an accident, so it takes us 3 hours to get to North Carolina, but it took us 6 hours to get out of Chattanooga.
Just because of the accident?
So,
What'd you do to fill the time while you were waiting?
we'd sing to the music.
Oh, nice. But your mom loved that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just me and my other brother.
Okay.
So we were making jokes and driving our mother insane, which kind of.
You were the entertainment. Good job.
Who was your role model growing up? Who inspired you?
Well, my dad was a pretty big person in my life. He was pretty influential. He still is to this day. I also had a teacher who was a wrestling coach / football coach. He had a lot of success as a high school player, and he even actually played some college. And he was a guy that I always kind of found my way into his office when I was in high school. His name was Paul Carter. So I could say, other than my father, he was a pretty influential person in my life.
As a child, who were you bullied on or picked on?
Yeah, I kind of grew up in a rough neighborhood as a youngster, and with that, unfortunately, you have to deal with stuff like that, like kids that might not be happy with their situations. I find that a lot of kids that pick on other kids, they're usually jealous about something that the kid has that they're picking on, because there'd be no real reason for them to pick on them otherwise. And I think that knowing that from a kid that gets picked on sometimes makes it easier to deal with, and even it makes it easier to communicate with somebody that's picking on you. Always remember this, there's safety in numbers. And I'm sure that good kids always have good friends. When you stay with your friends and you stay in numbers like that, and you deal with the bully straight up, head on, you usually find that they'll back down. So if you stand your ground, not necessarily saying get in a fight or anything like that, but still articulating that you're not going to stand for that. And I know it might sound crazier than it actually is, but if you stand up to a bully, that's exactly what they don't want you to do. Bullies pick on those that don't defend themselves. And the person that defends himself, that's just too much work for a bully. So if you stand your own ground, stay with your friends in numbers, then usually those situations they won't come near as much.
What advice would you give bullies who are bullying kids?
Find something to do. Find something to do. I mean, obviously, if a kid picking on somebody else, I think they're missing something. You know, and they need to probably try and find out what that is. Making someone else feel bad about themselves, or making fun of people, or picking on somebody, making them feel bad. If that makes you feel good, then there's really something wrong that you really need to look back inside of yourself and find out what's causing me to be a jerk to everybody else that's around me. Because ultimately, people will realize who the bully is. They know who the bullies are. And you don't want that kind of reputation of being a bully, because no one really likes a bully, do they?
Yeah, because after you turn around, some people won't trust you because you've already been bullied.
And you always remember this too, Morgan. The bully always gets his. Always.
As a child athlete, what is one of the best things you did to make football a success?
How about if we switch that to basketball?
Okay.
Because basketball was something that I really applied myself at as a youngster. I don't know why, Morgan. I was attracted to being a basketball player. Probably because a lot of kids in my neighborhood played basketball, and I watched a lot of basketball on television. What I would do is I practiced feverishly. Whenever I had a spare moment, I'd be down in my basement, practicing dribbling, or I'd be at the park, shooting by myself if I weren't playing games with other kids. I mean, you couldn't take me off the basketball court. So I think that kind of dedication, that kind of commitment, and really enjoying it are probably what made me a better player.
What is one of the worst things you think young athletes do?
I would probably say don't prepare, because in our line of work, luck favors the prepared. Always takes just a little bit of luck, But what makes that even easier is when you prepare yourself for what you have to do. So in other words, you got to work hard when it doesn't necessarily count. That way, it's easier when it does count. You know what I mean? So as much as people don't put a lot of emphasis on practice is probably one of the most important things, because it prepares you for what you're going to do.
Practice makes perfect.
Hello?
What do you think is the most important thing about being a young athlete? So many peers look up to the athletes in their schools.
You have a position of notoriety, People respect athletes. They look up to athletes, Look at our culture and our society today, Morgan. Some of the most notifiable people that we see are athletes, stars, entertainers. And when you have that kind of a spotlight, use it for good, Do something to get a good message out, Allow someone to talk to you and ask you questions about your journey, so that way it makes their journey easier. Just don't blaze a trail and don't look back. I mean, you got to at least help those that kind of want to do what you do, or want to get better at something like that, and want to have some advice. So make yourself approachable to people, especially when you're a person that people look up to and they really kind of want to be like you. I mean, what better image to portray than someone that that people like being around and that works hard.
If you could speak to all young athletes right now, what would you say to them, and what advice would you give them?
Make sure that whatever you're doing, you're getting something out of it. And what I mean by that is, it's easy for people to get wrapped up into things that they're kind of so-so about, But I found out the things that you're most passionate about, those are the things that kind of propel you the furthest in life. You know what I mean? So if you find something or a couple of things that you're really passionate about or animate about, when you commit yourself to those things, it makes it easier. It's like I heard this old saying when I was a kid, Morgan. It was, if you love what you're doing, you'll never work a day in your life. And what that means is, if you're able to do something, to make a living that you happen to love to do, I mean, how hard would your life be if you love what you're doing and it also affords you, the things that you want to do in life?
If you could speak to all kids in general, what would you tell them and what advice would you give them?
Listen to your parents. They know more than you. Oh, no kid wants to hear that.
Yeah.
But you know what the funny thing is, though? Parents were kids too. I know it's a shocker. And usually they've probably been through some of the same things that you're going to go through as a child, And sometimes their advice might not sound like it makes that much sense, but when you think about it, things will fall back into place. So listening to your parents is probably one of the most important things, but also having respect for yourself makes people around you have respect for you, and that's ultimately what you want. Not respect like you're so cool that nobody can say anything to you, but respect like people want to include you in things. You know what I mean? People want to ask your advice about things. When they respect you, people want to be around you, and they want to know more about what makes you tick because they feel that there's something cool that you're doing.
If you could tell a young athlete one thing to do to make their career better, what would it be and why?
Just one thing? Well, it would probably have to be, you really have to apply yourself. If it's easy, anybody can do it, And I think that a lot of people who follow the path of athletics and sports, they want to be able to do something that not a lot of people can do. But the only way that you can really try and be the best you can be is to apply yourself. Make sure that you're finding something that you like doing, and that way when you apply yourself, it's easier work for you.
You're a father. How many kids do you have?
I have 3. I have a 13-year-old, a 14-year-old, and an 11-year-old. 2 boys and a girl. Yeah, they're my pride and joy too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
What is your favorite thing about being a father?
It allows me to be a kid. I get to throw baseballs and footballs around. I get to build racetracks. I get to play with Legos. I get to play with video games. It affords me the ability to stay young. I think when you're interacting with your kids, especially when they're like your age, it's so much fun finding out how they tick, and then actually finding out how much they're just like you. Especially when you remember back when you were a kid. Man, I used to do that when I was a kid, and they're doing the same things. I think parenthood is a wonderful thing as long as you're prepared for it. That's why they say that the younger you are, you're not as ready mentally to be a good parent. The older that you are, the more experiences that you have in life will kind of afford you the ability to provide a better life for your family. So the older you get and the more versed in this world you are, I think the better opportunities you have of making a well-rounded family, and therefore you get a lot of enjoyment out of that.
In my family, we have a Wii, and we do the Wii Olympics. So it's we divide into 2 teams.
Oh, okay.
Because there's 6 of us.
Right.
And we have like the Wii Sports, so it's funny, and it's just a big competition in my family because we're all into sports.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always smack and you can't do this. It's
Little
funny.
trash talking.
It's funny to see the parents act like kids.
Oh, absolutely. That's the fun part. Seeing your parents when they take on those roles of competitors, they look totally different when they're telling you to eat your peas, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Because they want to win, ultimately. My favorite, Wii bowling. I love bowling. Yeah. My daughter kicks my butt in tennis too. I don't like to play that too much. And you start sweating and so.
And we have Lions High Olympics,
Uh-huh.
and me and my dad were up against each other, and we were doing the bobsledding.
Uh-huh.
I kicked his butt.
That's so cool.
What is the biggest challenge of being a parent?
You always want to say the right things, but you don't always say the right things. I think that the most challenging part about being a parent is trying to stay connected. In other words, saying things to your kids that they understand, but then also not coming across like you don't understand what's going on with them. And I think that's when sometimes the breakdowns in communication between parents and kids fall just in that little world right there. In that the parents don't necessarily say the things that make the kid understand, and therefore the kid doesn't understand exactly what the parent's saying. So it's kind of like sometimes communication is everything, though, really, Morgan. I mean, how do you articulate what you want in life unless you're able to speak it? You know, how are you going to be a good parent if you can't explain to your parents why things are right and wrong? You know, I think that sometimes those are the biggest challenges that most parents face. Is saying the right thing.
Yeah, sometimes you like think it and you think it comes out all right, but then once you say it, it comes out totally wrong.
See, that's another practice thing. If you rehearse it in your head, then maybe it comes out of your mouth better than it would be when you were, than if you didn't think about it before you said something. That's why people always say, think before you speak. You ever heard that? Yeah, that's
probably
yeah, exactly.
Especially with me.
That's with everybody, Morgan. It's with everybody.
If you could tell your children one thing today, what would it be and why?
If I could what? I'm sorry?
Tell your children one thing today, what would it be and why?
If I could tell my children one thing today?
Yes.
Man, that's a good question.
Like one piece of advice.
I would tell them, stick together. You know? At the end of the day, it's a crazy world out there, you know? But you always should be able to fall back on family, you know? So if you stick together and you remain close, life's ups and downs, they won't be that much of a problem if you have someone that can go through life, those things with you, you know? I think that when you stay close as a family, it allows you to, when you have problems, have someone to fall back on. And you can also be there for somebody else too, you know? The close family, the family that does a lot of things together, that communicates, that plays together, I mean, those are the best situations to be in. And I would always tell my children, at the end of the day, your family is what cares about you most. So you want to keep them as close to you and to your heart as you possibly could.
Your sons play football. What do you do to make sure they stay healthy?
Well, I have one son that plays football, but I have both my sons play different sports, and my daughter's into dance. As a matter of fact, she's actually even thinking about doing some volleyball this year. But I would always tell the kids that giving 100% effort doesn't guarantee you won't get hurt, but the likelihood of you getting hurt is less. In other words, if you try as best you possibly can and are not taking plays off or being distracted and don't know what you're doing, those things are the things that cause problems, that get you to second guessing what's going on out there, and then you can get yourself hurt that way. If you're focused, if you know what you're doing, and you're trying 100% at doing it, then more than likely your injuries and things like that will be at a minimum.
What do you tell your kids on game day or the recitals?
You gotta find that inner competitor and bring them to the surface. From the beginning of the game to the end of the game, you gotta always hustle. You gotta always give 100% effort, and you gotta always know what you're doing. Those three things right there probably pretty much don't guarantee you success, but you'll have a lot better ratio of success.
Trying my dad and my papa, they tell me try never to get nervous. Which I hate that because then it gets more nervous.
But you know what that is? That's confidence. If you're confident about what you're doing, then you really don't get that nervous, because you know that if you're confident about what you're doing, you're probably one of the best that's doing it, right? But how do you get that way? Give 100% effort, know what you're doing,
You played college football. With all the money made off college athletes and the financial struggles the athletes go through, what do you think they should become compensated or given an allowance?
Compensated? Well, I can understand both sides of the argument. Some people would argue that a player who's on scholarship that doesn't necessarily have to pay for his education, paying them seems like a little bit much. But then there's the flip side of that is that the money that athletes receive from a scholarship doesn't cover the expenses in its entirety of what it costs to go to college. In other words, your books, your tuition, your room and board are paid for if you have a full scholarship. Not everyone has a full scholarship. There's half scholarships and then there's no scholarships. But in essence, the cost of amenities like power, water, cable, phone, those things aren't built into the scholarship. So those are expenses that kind of are unforeseen, like gas to get to and from campus, How about maybe even a pizza every now and then, you know, with your friends,
Food.
or a movie. You know what I mean? Those are things like that that cost money, and unfortunately, there's no money there to allow those players to be able to do that under the current situation.
From what I understand, you can't work.
If you're under full scholarship, you're not allowed to have a job during the school semesters. Now, in the summertime, you can be employed, but I mean, usually a summer job consists of something that might last a month and a half. I mean, I don't know how much money that a lot of players can make that can last them throughout the entirety of the year up until next summer, which is it's more than likely not. But yeah, that's the difference. A non-scholarship player does have the ability to work, but then again, he has to pay for his school, so that's why they're allowed to work, because more than likely they're probably putting themselves through school. So if you're a scholarship athlete, then you do have a lot of things taken care of. I'd say probably 80% of your college experience is paid for, but that 20%, I mean, that's where a lot of players have a lot of pitfalls, because there is a little bit of a gap between the actual expense of going to college and actually what's covered.
I do think it's kind of bad because, like, I feel bad for the kids who have the scholarships because they have to practice 4 hours a day and then they have to balance school and.
Right. It is difficult in being a student athlete, but you know you're there because it's a unique situation and you're providing a talent that not every student has. But understanding that, there are also some difficulties in being that, and that a lot of work that you do in college, you work with other students, and they get together after class. It's sometimes, you know, outside of the lecture hall, and a lot of times you don't have the ability to work with them because you're lifting weights or going to practice, or you have meetings and things like that that don't afford you the ability sometimes to connect with those other students. So then you have to do the extra things, the little extra things to catch you up, so to speak. So it can be difficult, but then, you know, I think, like I said, anything that's worth doing, you know, it's going to be hard, but there's some reward to it.
You were a first draft round pick for the 1993 for the Houston Oilers.
Mm-hmm.
When you were first drafted, what was your first thought?
I was scared to death. I think I was scared because of the uncertainty. I was scared because I never really spent a significant amount of time away from home. You know, I'm a 17-year-old kid who now gets drafted to the Houston Oilers. That's at least 4 states away.
Where were you living at the time?
I was living in Illinois. I was living just outside Chicago. So that in itself, driving is 17 hours. Flight is like 2.5. So I wasn't anywhere close to home, and I was still young. I think I was a little nervous about what was going to be on my path, you know. But fortunately, a lot of things, you know, get spelled out for you in the beginning. You know what I mean? You understand what your role is supposed to be and what your responsibilities are, and you settle into those, and it makes it easier.
Did it mean anything to you? Like, were you really excited that you were the first round pick?
Morgan, being a first round pick, there's a lot of expectation, you know? And sometimes a lot of athletes don't live up to that expectation, depending on how good a player you are. That's what people expect to see from you on a regular basis. And it's hard. It's hard making an adjustment. It's hard learning new systems. And if you can't do that in a timely fashion, sometimes you just fall by the wayside. So there is this, there's a sense of urgency, if you will, you know, to learn all that you can as fast as you can. And if you don't, I mean, you know, the repercussions are you'll be going home earlier and probably without a degree, or you know, without, you know, actually let's get drafted, moving on. But I think that ultimately it's just one of those things that, you know, if you ask questions and you find out where you're supposed to be, usually that guidance will get you in the right spot.
How did it feel to be selected as a first-time All-Pro and 2-time Whirlpool player?
Now, see, Morgan, those are accolades that get awarded to you typically by your peers. So it's pretty cool when people around you think that you're a good player. You know, I think that's probably one of the bigger accomplishments that I was able to achieve when I was playing. Just because those guys around me recognize me as a good player, that makes you feel good inside, knowing that the people you play against and also the people you play with, you know, they kind of hold you in that kind of regard.
What you also played in the Super Bowl. Describe what it felt to run into the field on game.
Man, you gotta think about this. 32 teams are trying to get to this one game, and there's only 2 that can do it, and we were one of them.
No, what team was
The
this?
Tennessee Titans. That was a special team and a special year because we went through a lot of things, a lot of hard work and a lot of luck to win into that season. But fortunately for us, we were actually able to get to the last game and play against one of the best teams in the NFL. Unfortunately, just like anything else, there are winners and losers, and we didn't come up on the winning side. But we gave them a heck of a run, though.
There's always another chance.
Absolutely.
You're never really a loser. You just didn't.
Yeah.
Because you always tried your best.
Let's say loser's kind of a loose word, okay? There are winners and losers, but not like losers like you're a loser. Like loser like you didn't win the game. Just because you didn't win the game doesn't mean you're not a good player or a good person. You know what I mean? A loser in that respect is like, someone that doesn't make good decisions, someone that always finds himself in trouble. Those are, I guess for lack of a better word, losers. But in the sense of competition, a loser isn't necessarily a bad thing. A loser is someone that just didn't win. A loser is someone who has to try again to be a winner. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're a bad person just because you lose. It's part of the game.
The most important thing is that you always try 150%.
Bang. There you have it.
What has been the worst thing about being a pro football player?
Being able to talk to cool people like you. Especially when I'm retired, it's like, you've always got a story to tell. And every now and then someone will walk up to you and ask you about that story. And as long as you can, you have good memories of the things that you've done, were able to accomplish, it leads to great conversations like this. I get to meet and talk to all kinds of different people. People always want to walk up to you and ask you what you think about the Titans, and are they going to be a good team and things like that. And it's always refreshing, to be able to walk away from a conversation and people say, man, he's pretty cool. You know what I mean? I learned something more about the game today. That's always a rewarding thing. I got that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
As an athlete, when you look back into your young child years, when you were first a young athlete, what do you think helped you to become the best?
I didn't like losing as a kid. If we were racing, to get a plate for dinner, I was running as hard as I could. If we were, riding our bikes, I always wanted to be first. I like competing. I think that competitive nature in me just kind of made me try harder. It made me want to be the best. I think that's probably what it was.
I know how you feel always want to win.
But like we said, because when we talk about that, winning's not everything. Sometimes the process is pretty rewarding too. Because think of it when you're part of a team. Think of all the friends that you've made. Think of all the competition and battles that you've been through with these people. And even at the end of the day, when you look across at the person you played against, it's probably really no bad feelings whether you won or lost, because it's over. You competed. You learned something probably, and especially if you're doing something that you love doing, you probably had some fun doing it.
What is the best piece of advice someone's ever given you growing up?
Be patient. That's not one of my strong suits, by the way. Patience isn't. But I do realize that as I get older and I become more patient, things become more clear to you. You know what I mean? I think as a young person, even as a young player, you have this sense of urgency that gets you all ramped up, and and a lot of times you don't take things and deal with things patiently, letting them come to you. I think that the older and more experienced you get in life, in sport, in anything, and you develop a reasonable amount of patience, then things become clearer to you. I don't necessarily say faster, because it's not about speed. I guess it's just they're more obvious the right things to do.
After playing in the NFL for 13 years and being retired, how is your health?
Not too bad. I've had a number of surgeries when I was playing on my hands and knees and things like that. But I do understand that it doesn't always. I got lucky. I was actually. I didn't have too many injuries. I didn't have too many things going on with me So that way when I walked away from the game and I got older as a person, they became more of a hindrance. I got lucky in that respect because I know there's a lot of players that, they don't have the ability to walk like they did. They can't sleep like they used to be able to. I'm sure you know about concussions, right? When you get cuckoo up in the head, yeah. There's players that are dealing with that. There's a lot of things that people who compete have to deal with. Not just in football, in a lot of sports. Anything that you're doing physical. For the most part, I got lucky, but my health is pretty good.
What was your playing weight?
Well, I played at a variety of weights, Morgan. When I first got drafted, I was 330 about 330 pounds. Then I went up a couple more from there. I went up to about 346. It's the highest I played at, 346 pounds. Now I weigh 246. And the reason why I did that is arthritis tends to set in, and muscular issues tend to set in when you're heavier in weight, especially when you're heavier than you're supposed to be. So I thought that if I could lose some pounds before I got that much older, it would be easier for me and I wouldn't feel as bad. So like I'm 40 now. When I started losing weight, I was probably 35, 36, knowing that when I got to 40, it was going to be harder for me to lose the weight. So I really kind of put a big effort in losing the weight right when I retired, so that way it was easier for me when I get to the age I am now.
How hard was it to lose the weight from the playing?
I hired a trainer. It takes discipline. It takes something different than when you're competing. Because when you're competing, you have to do it. You gotta go to practice. You gotta get in shape. You gotta work at it. But when you're retired, there's no one really telling you to do anything. So you gotta have that kind of discipline in yourself to get into the gym, to meet your goals and to work hard, especially when there's no one telling you to do that. But hopefully you've learned enough along your journey, as to what to do when no one's standing over you telling you what to do.
After maintaining your health after retirement, do you have a couple health tips you could share?
Yeah, I can. Eating healthy is something I never really paid attention to when I was playing. But as you get older and you start learning more about how good nutrition helps your body, it also helps you compete. It helps you become a better player and also helps you think more clearly too. So putting good things in your body, like how about this? Would you put oil in your gas tank?
No.
Doesn't run right, does it? See, that's kind of what happens when you put things that are not necessarily good for your body in your body. And especially if you're trying to drive that car or your body, you want it to run as smooth as possible, right? So you got to put the right kind of fuel in there. So I know a lot of people don't like to hear about it, but vegetables are good, obviously. Good source of proteins and vitamins. Obviously, you've just got to watch your sugar and your fat intakes, so that way you don't put yourself in a lot of situations that that are hard to deal with. You know what I mean? Like if you don't eat the right things, then you've all of a sudden made this little trek an uphill battle. You know what I mean? So eat the right things, and also sodas and stuff like that. The things that are bad for you. I think that, and I'm not going to say that they're completely bad for you, because I have a Coke in it every now and then, and my kids will have a Sprite every now and then. But you got to just make sure that every now and then it's not like a habitual thing. And drink lots of water. Water's the best thing for you.
I eat all my vegetables and fruits, but the one thing I hate is Brussels sprouts. I hate Brussels sprouts.
I'm with you on that one. Brussels sprouts is gross.
What
about broccoli?
I love broccoli.
Yeah, I got broccoli. See, the only thing about broccoli is it's a vegetable and it's great, but I like to smother mine with cheese. That's not good though. Tastes better.
We call it little cheese.
Well, I like, what kind of cheese do I put on it? See, there's so many different kinds of cheeses. What name of yellow cheese? Is American cheese a yellow cheese?
I think so. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, we'll just say American. It's good.
But in talking about NFL, do you think the NFL pays enough for the ex-pro athletes that have got like concussions or surgeries
Well-
that still need help? Do you think they're paying enough to help them?
See, that's the big thing that's going on right now, Morgan, is that there's a labor dispute going on between the NFL owners and the players. And one of the biggest reasons why there's a dispute is because there's no collective bargaining agreement. A collective bargaining agreement it sets the table for the benefits and revenue distribution. In other words, how players get paid and how the owners get paid. So they have to have this thing called the CBA in place for everyone to be able to have an understanding of what the rules are. Okay? There are a lot of players that played this game a long time ago. And what they did was they laid the groundwork for the game that you see today. Okay? Those players now are suffering debilitating injuries. You know what debilitating injuries are? Things that happen to you over time. You know? Just because you're not competing on the court or on the football field doesn't mean that your body still isn't going through things. And having competed at that level, depending on how long you've done it, depends, you know, that shows you what kind of shape your body's going to be in. And in a lot of instances, those expenses are not covered. 5 years after you play the game, Morgan, I don't have insurance. You know, the thing that allows you to get braces or deal with injuries and things like that, or, you know, when things happen to you as a player, you pretty much have to pay for those things out of your own pocket. That's one of the things they have to address. And also, a fair distribution of the money that the NFL makes in its entirety. You know, just make sure that those are at least fair and even too. So, I think that the NFL does. It's a sport that makes a lot of money, Morgan. Okay, and there's a big pie to be split up between players and owners, but they just have to find the right way and the fair way to do it. So that's why they're negotiating right now. So is it in place now? No, or if it was, they wouldn't need to be negotiating. But I think in time they'll develop something that'll be fair for everybody.
After playing in the NFL for 13 years, what do you like the most about the NFL?
There are so many different parts that go into football. You know, it's there's so many different positions. There are at any time on the field, 6 or 7 positions. They're all doing different things, and it takes them doing those different things the right way for teams to have success. So it's fun, but then also it's interesting in that it takes so many different components and parts that have to play well, for a team to have success. So I think that's the interesting part about football in the NFL, is that it takes so many different people and so many different jobs that need to be done at the same time. That's what makes it interesting.
What was your ritual or lucky charm that you did?
I always had to get in the hot tub, because those old muscles, as you got older, they need to be loosened up. So I always got to get in the hot tub. Then you always got to get your headphones out and you got to listen to your playlist.
Music?
Heck yeah, you know what I'm talking about? You put the earphones in, you just sit there and you kind of get in your own mind. And you start getting yourself mentally ready to do things. And there are songs that you pick out that get you amped up, aren't they? Like, what's the song that you play when you really get excited to do something?
One of my favorite songs now are, I like The Dog Days Are Over
Dog Days Are Over?
by
Who sings that?
Florence and the Machine,
Oh, okay.
and Rolling Into the Deep by Adele.
Okay. That gets you amped up. Let's see. Well, I used to listen to In the Air by Genesis. Or was it Phil Collins? Either one of those two. Phil Collins used to be the lead singer of Genesis, and I can't remember if he actually did that song by himself or if that was part of the group that he was with. But I used to love that song. It would get me so amped up to go out and play Michigan. I want to go out there and just touch my shit. No, I'm just kidding.
I like
It took me back.
We Will Rock You.
Oh, that's a cool one too. That's by Queen. Yeah. But usually you play that song after you done already beat it, because that's what they say. The song is like, we are the champions, that means that we won. Singing We Are the Champions if you lost is kind of weird. Yeah, the other team be looking at you like, hey, that's our song.
If you could play one thing, or if you could do one play over again, what would it be and why?
One play I would do over, I actually had a touchdown called back because I threw a bad block. I'm an offensive lineman and I block for guys. And I threw a bad block. They got a flag thrown on me. It was a penalty. but the runner went on to score a touchdown, and that touchdown came off because of my block. So that'd be a play that if I could do over again, I would block it the right way, so that way the touchdown would get called back.
Speaking of the NFL lockout, which is basically
Millionaires versus billionaires, yeah.
shuffle, what do you think the NFL lockout needs to fix it?
Well, that's a good question. You and I should probably fly up to Chicago and see if we couldn't give an answer to that question. That's what they're meeting right now, by the way. I think that what has to happen is they have to find a fair way to make sure that everybody gets compensated. In other words, if the sport itself makes a certain amount of money, would you agree that that money should be split up pretty evenly between the people who own the teams and the people who play for those teams?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think in finding that balance, that'll also create harmony. And also taking care of the little things that improve the quality of the game. In other words, making sure that players stay healthier longer. Making sure that that there are benefits and things in place to take care of athletes once their careers are done. Because so much of your time and commitment goes into playing these sports for a number of years, that at the end, because of the commitment that you had before then, there has to be something at the end of the road, so to speak. You know, they've got to have those things in place, and they've also just got to do better about increasing the education of its players about the sport and about competing and about life. That way, you don't see players making the same mistakes over and over again. They understand the repercussions for their actions. Everything that they do, there's a consequence. And in educating young players and all players alike, I think it'll cut down a number of incidences and improves the game, creating a bigger fan base, making more people like you and I come out and watch these games.
When you sit here today and look back at your NFL career, what are you most proud of?
Being a leader. I think that having your teammates look to you for guidance. I think having your teammates come to you for words of advice or words of encouragement. Being a leader recognized by your peers is a great thing. It's a great responsibility. But I think that if you're up to making that challenge, the reward it's unbelievable. Because it's almost like a fathering role. See, I love being a parent, and I love being a dad. And I think in essence, it's kind of like the same thing. When you're playing alongside of guys that look to you for guidance and wisdom, it makes you feel better inside as a person.
Who do you think is the greatest athlete ever? This doesn't have to be football. It can be baseball, basketball, soccer. But why do you think that?
Well, let me see. Who would be a great athlete? First off, let me tell you what my parameters are for being a great athlete. You have to have a drive, a determination to do things well in the right way. You have to be effective. In other words, you have to be regarded as one of the best at your sport. That's football, baseball, basketball, wrestling, lacrosse, soccer, you name it. Also having, in my opinion, a lot of mobility, size and quickness. Those are things that come into play when you're talking about being an athlete. One of the best athletes, in my opinion, would be someone like LeBron James. LeBron James is 6'8", 265 or 80 pounds. I can't remember which one it is. I think it's 265. And he moves like someone who's a lot smaller than he is. His abilities on the court, you can definitely say, are a direct attribution to his athletic ability, the things he's able to do. I think a guy with that kind of size and can do the things that he can do as far as how high he can jump, how fast he can run, and how intelligent he is about the game, those make him a pretty phenomenal athlete. So I'd probably say LeBron James.
How do you make a difference in your community?
Being involved. You've got to make yourself accessible. I met you yesterday at a golf clinic. at a football clinic that your brother was at, right? Well, if I didn't make myself accessible, you would never have met me, would you?
No, I wouldn't
And
know.
we wouldn't be doing this interview, right?
I wouldn't know who you are.
Exactly. So when you do things in the community, I mean, obviously, first off, you have to get out. You have to, when people ask you to do things, you have to say yes. And then in doing that, you've got to also, say something that people view worth listening to. You know what I mean? You just can't get up there and start speaking. Because then pretty soon people just start trailing off and losing interest in what you say. As long as you have something relevant and pretty worthwhile saying, people will listen. But you got to make yourself accessible first.
What is your favorite charity?
I've done a number of charities. I've done the Ronald McDonald House. They actually provide assistance for families that have kids that need to deal with things like a Vanderbilt Hospital, some other hospitals and things like that. They provide housing for families that come to be with kids and patients that have issues that have to be in the hospital for an extended period of time. I've done things for nurses for newborns. That also helps new expectant mothers, maybe young mothers sometimes, mothers that have financial hardships. I've done things for Make-A-Wish Foundation. Sometimes maybe a cancer patient might have something that he would really like to accomplish in his life, and those organizations help do things like that. So it's not just one thing per se. I kind of try and gravitate towards what people ask me to do. More than likely, if I see that this charity or foundation is doing something great for the community and helps a lot of people, then I'm probably going to be more apt to help with what I can do in making those organizations better.
How do you feel about being a role model in your community?
Well, if you're a good dad, then you have to accept that role model responsibility. Because I have my own children that look up to me. And understanding that, I know that when I walk outside of this house, there are a number of people who are looking at me, looking up to me, and looking at me and what I do. So I wouldn't want anyone to reflect on what I did in a negative light. So I always have to try and put my best foot forward and do the right things. I don't always do the right things, but that's what my goal is. And even when you do things that are wrong, understanding that you do things are wrong, and do the best you can to fix those things.
When you speak with young athletes and they look up to you, what do you hope they see?
I hope that they see someone that they can always walk up and ask questions to, because I think that that's one of the biggest problems is communication. And in communicating, sometimes young players are scared to ask questions. I don't want anyone to ever feel that they couldn't come up and get the answers from me. If I have the answer, or even if I don't, I'll find out the right answer. I'll do the best job I possibly can to educate you as a young player, okay? But you have to be able to ask first. That's the difference.
What is the nicest things you've done for someone else?
Well, I was driving down the freeway one time, and I saw a lady sitting in her car, and her windows were down as I was driving by. And it was probably about 90 degrees outside. It was hot. She had all her windows down, and her flashers were on, her hazard lights. So I pulled over, and I asked if I could help her. And she said, "We ran out of gas." So I said, "Okay, you and your kids get my truck." I took them to the gas station, which was a couple miles away, bought them a gas can, put gas in it, took them back to their truck, and put gas in her car. And then she drove herself to the gas station. So doing things like that, I think that's what good people do. It's not anything that's that special, because it's, if you care about your fellow man, so to speak, then you'll do things like that. Because you ever heard of the old saying, pay it forward?
No.
Pay it forward is like when something good happens to you, you do something good for somebody else. You pay it forward. Good things continue to happen to you when you do good things for other people. You see? So
That's kind of like karma.
Exactly. But karma works bad too. You see what I'm saying?
You have to keep your karma clean by helping others.
Exactly. And they went, bam, there you go. That's exactly it. The more good that you do, the more good happens to you. Ooh, how about that? I should write that down.
If you could hang out with one person, alive or who has passed on, who would it be, why, and what would you talk about? And what would you do with them?
What would I do? You know what? My grandfather passed away when I was 15, and I had a pretty good relationship with him. But as a kid, I think if I had the opportunity to kind of chat with him more as an adult, I probably would have found out a lot more about my family, you know? So I probably would have wanted to hang out with my grandfather more than I actually got the chance to do. And I think some of the questions I would ask him would be, first off, about things that were going on in his life when he was younger. You know, how was life growing up for him? Because it was a completely different era, completely different time. You know what I mean? So I want to know about that, and I also want to know about like my dad. You know, because this was my dad's dad. I want to know about things about my dad when he was little. Like, you know, what were some of his little weird, quirky things that he used to like to do? You know, just finding out more about my family and where I came from.
On my mother's side, I have a great grandmother,
Mm-hmm.
but my great grandfather passed away right before my mother graduated
I'm sorry to hear that.
college, and he was a Secret Service agent.
Wow.
And I've always wanted to hear his stories.
Yeah.
because,
Hey, but you know what? Is this your mom's dad or your dad's dad? Which one is it?
my mom's grandfather.
Your mom's grandfather? Maybe your mom asked some questions when she was a kid. See, what I found out is that even though I don't necessarily have the ability to talk to my grandfather, I can ask my dad a lot of stuff about my grandfather because they had conversations. Maybe your mom knows more about your great-grandfather than you thought.
I do know one thing though.
Hmm.
I know that when President Kennedy was shot,
Hmm?
the First Lady asked for him to be only with the children
Really?
because he was close to the family.
Wow. That's amazing. See, stuff like that, I didn't even know that about your family. That's pretty cool.
It is kind of cool,
Yeah.
you know.
And see, you were able to share that story with me.
When you wake up every day, what do you most look forward to?
Well, I always look forward in seeing my kids, their faces when they wake up in the morning. It's always exciting to me when you first wake up to just see what kind of a day you're gonna have. You know what I mean? And you have a lot to say in how your day goes. You know what I mean? Getting a good night's sleep helps you wake up refreshed and having a great outlook on how your day goes. You know? Have you ever noticed that when you don't sleep as good, sometimes things are harder for you during the day because you're not as rested and whatnot?
You get cranky.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't deal with things normally how you would. I think sometimes when you wake up like that, it's best to just go back to bed.
Yes, but sometimes
Good.
when
Yeah.
you're busy,
Yeah.
you can't just So I've caught myself once or twice. Twice we've been getting ready to go out,
Mhm.
and I'll sit down on the couch to watch TV, and then I'll wake up I'll get choking still to wake up or be I fell asleep.
Hmm. But sometimes you need that little nap. You ever fallen asleep for like 5 or 10 minutes and you felt like you've been sleeping for like hours?
Yes.
Oh, those are the best naps. Those are called power naps. I do those a lot.
What do you do to unwind and relax?
I probably watch way too much television. But I do. I love movies. I love movies. I'm a movie junkie. I try and go see as many movies as I possibly can because movies allow you to experience things that are just so unreal. Like you can't fly on a regular basis, can you? But in the movies you can. You can't lift up a truck on a normal basis, but in the movies you can, you know. And
You have to escape the real world.
well, there's nothing really wrong with the real world. I mean, the world is really what you make it. But I just like going to the movies because I like pretending when I was a kid, you know? I like being superheroes. I like being superstars and things like that. And those are the people that you typically see on the big screen.
When you're driving in the car, what songs make you crank up the radio and sing like a crazy person?
I love that one track by Barney. I love you, you. I'm kidding.
I was gonna
Yeah,
say.
there you were. You know, I like a variety of music. You know, I listen to a lot of stuff. You know, I usually end up listening to whatever the kids want to hear in the car because you know what I want to hear, they don't want to hear. So unless I'm driving by myself, and when I do drive by myself, unfortunately, I listen to a lot of sports talk radio. You know, 'cause it's kind of like it's my job, and also I like keeping abreast of all the news stories and conversations. So I listen to a lot of sports talk radio. But when the kids are in the car, I just listen to whatever they got going on the radio.
What in general? What are you most proud of?
Being a dad. I mean, that's hands down the best thing that's ever happened to me. You know, you think that you know what love is until you have a kid. You know, and they're just little extensions of yourself running around out there in the world. You know, sometimes it creates anxiety as to where you're hoping, you know, that they always do the right things and that they understand everything well and that they're safe. You know, but ultimately, if you raise them right, they should have a pretty good understanding of the way things go in life.
If you could thank one person for making a difference in your life, who would you thank and why?
Rosalind and Philip Hopkins. Those are my parents. Yeah, I think that they showed my brother and my sister and I a lot of love when we were growing up. They were very supportive when we were growing up. You know, we didn't have everything that we wanted when we were growing up, and you know what? It wasn't important to have everything when we were growing up. But they did provide for me enough guidance and enough love to make me a well-rounded person. That way I could reciprocate that to my kids. So I would say to Mom and Dad, thanks.
You have a radio show here in Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
What do you like the most about that job?
Talking to all kinds of different people. Every single day I talk to somebody different morning. And we're talking about different topics too. We talk about a lot of things that are current events, a lot of things that you hear about on television and in the world of sports. But, you know, we also get to communicate and talk to people who don't necessarily have a complete understanding of all of the things that are going on. It's our job to research and understand and give the correct answer and responses to a lot of things that are going on in the world of sports particularly. And I get the chance to talk to a lot of people on a regular basis about those things, and the landscape always changes. In other words, there's always new stories to be talked about. There's always new forms of competition, new games, you know. There's always something new about it, and that ever-changing landscape is cool for me. I like it.
How was the adjustment for you when you retired? Was it difficult? What made it acceptable?
Extremely difficult. It was extremely difficult in that, remember how we talked about preparation in the beginning of the interview? I prepared myself as best I thought I could, but I think ultimately having more of a plan before I retired would have made it easier for me. Because I still was in that figuring it out stage, you know, when I left the game, of what I really wanted to do. Because in the world of sports, like competition, like football, basketball, and baseball, you retire at a relatively young age. I retired when I was 36 years old. I still got a lot of life left to live. And in doing so, you've got to come up with a different career. Finding out what I gravitated to the most and what I did the best, which was going to give me the most amount of success, is what I had to try and figure out once I retired. And in doing so, it was difficult. But I think I finally found my niche.
My business is Augie. That is fine. That's all you got every day. How are you, Augie?
All I have every day. Man, I am... You know what? Are there Augie guys? No?
Yes, there is.
Oh, really? Well, see, I might be looking at doing that just because I think that maximizing your potential is important. And isn't that what you guys do as an Augie girl?
Yes.
Maximizing your potential?
As
all you got?
I try to inspire girls.
Yes, there you have it. And in doing that, you have to maximize your own potential, right? Because you have the ability to communicate with girls like you and even some older girls, right? Or even other kids. And when you maximize your potential, then you will expand your abilities to reach a lot of different people. And they'll always remember what you say.
What do you want to be remembered for?
I want to be remembered as someone people could always count on. A lot of things happen to people in life, you know? And when those things happen, you want someone to be kind of like a lighthouse. You know what I mean? You want to be that vision that people see when things get bad, you know? The
Like
thing that kind of
guide.
guides you, right? And that's kind of what I want to be. I want to be someone that when people don't necessarily have the answers, you know, they ask me the questions, knowing that if I don't know the answer, I will work feverishly until I find out what that answer is and get back to you. Because I want to be that person that that helps people, you know, that makes sure that everyone's day is great. You know, that you get the most out of every single thing that you do. And if I can help you do that, I will.
We have talked about a lot this morning. Is there anything we did not talk about that you would like to talk about?
You pretty much covered a lot of things, but I want to ask you a question.
Yes.
Why is it important for you to be an Augie girl?
Well, I think it's important to show girls a real role model because, like, the celebrities really aren't role models. They start out and then they always do something wrong that kids think they should follow because they look up to them.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they need a real role model.
That makes sense.
As being a kid in my community, I want to do that.
And you know what? You doing this right now is a great example.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you. Mr. Hawkins, thank you so much for talking with me today.
Morgan, anytime. Anytime.
It has truly been a pleasure.
You know what? It's probably been as much fun for me as it has been for you. I really enjoyed getting to meet you this morning. And thank you for coming and interviewing me. I appreciate you even wanting to ask an old football player, you know, some things. Hopefully it works well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, live, laugh, love, Augie. Bye!